The days after the eclipse settled over the Isle of Ashay like a new layer of skin, familiar but different. Mami Wata emerged from her vision with a clarity that burned away all doubt. The elder gods had shown her two paths for her grandsons, but they had also shown her something else. The future was not written in stone. It was written in choices, in training, in the daily grind of becoming what destiny demanded. She gathered the village elders that very evening, not in the sacred clearing, but in her own hut, away from curious years. The fire burned low as she spoke. "The boys are the key," she said, her voice quiet but iron hard. "The vision showed me that. Talasa knows it now too. She felt them during the eclipse, tasted their power like a shark tastes blood in the water. She will not stop coming. She will not stop trying to take them." The elders nodded, faces grim. They had seen the lightning. They had seen the boy become stone. "Then we train them," said one elder, a man named Kofi who had trained warriors for decades. "We make them strong." Mami Wata shook her head slowly. "Strong is not enough. Strong breaks. We must make them wise. We must make them connected. Their power is not just in their fists or their gifts. It is in their bond, in their understanding of who they are and why they are here." The decision was unanimous. The twins would begin the most intense training any child on Ashay had ever undertaken, not just in combat, but in spirit, in history, in the old ways of the ancestors. They would learn to fight with sword and spear, yes, but they would also learn to sit in silence and listen to the wind. They would learn when to strike and when to wait. Warriors from the village were assigned, the best spear thrower, the swiftest runner, the most patient hunter. Each would spend time with the boys, pouring generations of knowledge into their young minds and bodies. Kaito took to the physical training like a fish to water. His natural curiosity and energy made him eager to learn every weapon, every technique. He would practice a spear throw hundreds of times until his arm ached, just to feel the satisfaction of perfection. Silas was different. He watched first, analyzed, understood the pattern before he ever moved. His strikes, when they came, were economical, precise, and devastating. The trainers quickly learned that the boys needed different approaches. Kaito needed outlets for his endless energy. Silas needed puzzles to solve, strategies to contemplate. Together, they balanced each other. And as always, their training circled back to their powers. Kaito practiced his shape-shifting endlessly, turning his hand to water, then back, becoming stone, then flesh, learning to feel the boundary between himself and the elements. Silas worked with Mami Wata on controlling his storm voice. They discovered that his power was tied to his emotions, especially fear and anger. The calmer he remained, the more precise his lightning became. A shout of terror might call down a wild, indiscriminate storm. A focused, controlled utterance could strike a single leaf on a distant tree. The control was everything. Years passed this way. 5 years, to be exact. The boys grew lean and strong, their childish faces giving way to the sharp angles of young adolescence. Kaito, at 12, was broad-shouldered and quick to laugh, his blue eyes still holding that adventurous spark. Silas, at 12, was taller, quieter, his gray-green eyes holding depths that made adults uncomfortable. They were no longer just boys. They were becoming something the island had not seen in generations. And far across the sea, in the cold stone halls of Highcliffe Keep, their father was losing himself in wine and despair, unaware that their sons were rising like twin suns on the horizon. While the twins trained under the tropical sun, King Orion withered in the gray chill of Highcliffe Keep. The sign from the old stones, that single blue flower blooming against ancient rock, had given him hope for a time. He had returned to his castle with a lightness in his step, convinced that the land spirits had heard him, that some answer would come. But days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and the answer never arrived. He sent messengers to the stones, to the highlands, to any place where old magic was whispered to linger. They returned with nothing but confused reports, and eventually nothing at all. The sea claimed them, or the mountains swallowed them, or perhaps they simply abandoned a king who could offer no direction. The new fleet sat in the harbor, magnificent and useless. 500 men waited for a command that never came. Orion stopped visiting the shipyards. He stopped attending council meetings. He stopped eating with his daughters in the great hall. The 7 sisters watched their father fade with heavy hearts. Aurelia, the eldest, tried to intervene, sitting with him in his chambers, reading to him from old histories, hoping to spark some life. He would pat her hand gently and thank her, but his eyes remained empty, fixed on some middle distance where hope had once lived. The wine became his companion. Not in the morning, not yet, but by afternoon the goblet would be in his hand, and by evening he would be slurring words to ghosts only he could see. Queen Ilara, who had lost 2 infant sons and watched her husband crumble, did what she could. She ordered the servants to keep the fires high, to bring warm meals he barely touched, to maintain the appearance of a functioning court. But the kingdom felt the rot at its center. Valerion's enemies, sensing weakness, began to test its borders. Raiders from the northern isles grew bolder. Trade ships returned with stories of being harassed by vessels flying no flag. The king's advisors handled what they could, but without Orion's steady hand, the realm began to fray. On one such night, when the wind howled outside the castle walls and rain lashed the narrow windows, Orion sat alone in his chambers. A half-empty bottle of southern wine rested on the table beside him. His crown sat crooked on his head, a mocking reminder of the authority he no longer wielded. His tunic was stained, his beard unkempt. He looked less like a king and more like a beggar who had stumbled into the wrong room. He was reaching for the bottle again when the air changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in temperature, a thickening of the shadows in the corner. Orion blinked, attributing it to the wine. But then the shadows began to move. They swirled, gathered, coalesced into a form that slowly took shape in the flickering candlelight. A face emerged, an old woman's face with wise eyes and gray-streaked braids, wearing necklaces of bone and seed. She was translucent, made of mist and smoke, but unmistakably real. This was an astral projection of Mami Wata. Orion stared, his wine-addled mind struggling to process what he saw. He thought it was a dream, a hallucination brought on by too much drink. He laughed bitterly, raising his goblet in a mock toast. "Even my ghosts come from the south now," he slurred. "Welcome, spirit. Pull up a chair. The wine is terrible, but it does the job." The figure did not laugh. It spoke, and her voice was not in his ears, but in his mind, clear and sharp as a winter morning. "King Orion, I am no ghost. I am Mami Wata. I walked the spirit paths to find you. Your sons live." The goblet slipped from his fingers, red wine splashing across the stone floor like blood. Orion lunged forward, nearly falling from his chair, his eyes wide and suddenly sober. "What did you say?" he whispered. The mist figure solidified slightly, her form becoming more distinct. "Your sons, Kaito and Silas, they live. They are 12 years old now. They are strong. They have powers you cannot imagine." Orion's breath came in ragged gasps. He tried to stand, but he failed. He tried again, and finally managed to stumble to his feet. He reached toward the apparition, his hand passing through smoke. "Tell me," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "Tell me everything." Mami Wata's spirit form steadied itself in the flickering candlelight of the king's chambers. She saw the wreckage of the man before her, the stained clothes, the hollow cheeks, the desperate tears, and felt a pang of something she rarely experienced: pity. This was not the confident sea king who had walked her island's shores over a decade ago. This was a man hollowed out by grief and guilt. But there was no time for sentiment. She had come to deliver truth, and truth she would give. "Listen carefully, Orion of Valerion," her voice echoed in his mind. "Your sons are alive. They are well. They are more than well. They are becoming something the world has not seen since the age of legends."
She told him everything. She described the awakening of their powers. She told him of the eclipse vision, the two paths shown by the elder gods, the constant threat of Thalassa's hunger for their power. She described the 5 years of training, the warriors who taught them, the control they were slowly mastering. Orion listened like a man starved for air, drinking in every word. His tears dried on his cheeks, replaced by a wonder he had not felt in years. Powers. His sons had powers. They were not just heirs to a throne, they were heirs to something far greater. Thalassa knows them now, Mamiwata continued. She felt their power during the eclipse. She no longer wants only to destroy them. She wants to claim them, to twist their gifts into weapons for the deep. This is the danger we face. Orion's hands clenched into fists. "Then I will come," he said, his voice rough but gaining strength. "My new fleet is ready. 500 men. We will sail at once. We will bring them home." The spirit shook her head slowly, a gesture heavy with sad wisdom. "No, that is exactly what she wants. She proved she can destroy your ships whenever she chooses. If you sail now, you will die. Worse, you may force the boys to act before they are ready, to reveal themselves fully before they have control. That could doom them." Orion opened his mouth to argue, to protest, to rage against the injustice of being a father who could not protect his children, but Mamiwata raised a translucent hand, and he fell silent. "I tell you this not to break your heart further, but to give you hope. The boys are being trained in the ancient ways. They learn combat, strategy, and spirit work. When they are ready, truly ready, they will be the greatest weapon against Thalassa that this world has seen. But they are not ready yet. They are 12. They have years of growth ahead, years of mastery. You must be patient." She paused, letting the words sink in. Patience is the hardest lesson for any father, but it is the only path. When the time comes, you will not need 500 men. You will need only yourself and your ship. The boys will cross the sea with you, and together you will face what comes, but not before they are ready. Orion's mind raced. He wanted to argue, to plead, to beg her to take him with her through whatever magic she used. But even in his desperate state, he knew she was right. Thalassa had destroyed his fleet with casual ease. 500 more men would be 500 more corpses. "One more thing," Mamiwata added, her form beginning to flicker. "Your sons do not yet know you. They know your name, your kingdom, but not your face, your voice, or your heart. When they finally meet you, you must be worthy of the sons the gods have given you. Use this time to become that man." The king dropped to his knees, not in despair this time, but in gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for telling me. I will wait. I will become worthy. I swear it." Mamiwata's mist form began to fade, dissolving like morning fog under a rising sun. Her final words drifted through his mind like a gentle wind. "The boys are named Kaito and Silas. Remember those names. They are your legacy." And then she was gone. King Orion rose slowly, walked to his wash basin, and splashed cold water on his face. He looked at his reflection in the small mirror, haggard, aged, but with something new flickering in his stormy gray-green eyes. He had sons, they had powers, and they were waiting for him.
The weeks following Mamiwata's visit marked a quiet transformation in Highcliffe Keep. King Orion emerged from his chambers not with a grand proclamation, but with a simple, steady presence that his household had not seen in years. He bathed, shaved his ragged beard to a trimmed respectability, and dressed in clean robes. He walked the halls, not as a ghost, but as a king surveying his domain. His daughters noticed first. Aurelia found him in the library one morning, reading not military strategy or trade ledgers, but old histories, tales of fathers and sons, of legacies and reunions. He looked up when she entered and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning, my dear," he said. "I thought I might join you for breakfast today, if the invitation still stands." Aurelia burst into tears and hugged him so tightly he laughed, the first laugh she had heard from him in years. The word spread quickly through the castle. The king was back. Not the young, adventurous king of decades past, but something perhaps more valuable, a man with purpose. Orion threw himself into rebuilding not just his own spirit, but the kingdom's. He met with his advisors, reviewed the reports of border raids, and ordered the fleet to begin patrols again. Not to sail south, not yet, but to protect Valerion's own waters. He trained with his sword daily, pushing his body back toward the strength of his youth. He spent evenings with his daughters, learning their dreams, their fears, and their hopes. He was preparing, though for what he could not fully articulate. He was becoming worthy. On the Isle of Ashe, the years continued their slow march. The twins grew taller, stronger, more skilled with each passing season. Kaito's control over his shape-shifting became almost instinctive. He could shift his skin to bark while climbing trees, become one with the rocks when hiding during games, even turn his hand to water to scoop fish from tidal pools. The trainers marveled at his adaptability. Silas's progress was quieter but no less remarkable. He learned to summon not just lightning, but gentler aspects of the storm, a rumble of thunder to frighten aggressors, a gust of wind to deflect an arrow, a soft rain to cool fevered brows. Mami Wata taught him that power was not just destruction, it was balance. But the sea remained the great wound. Thalassa's blockade held firm. Fishing was a desperate gamble, successful perhaps one day in 10. The village survived on what the jungle provided: fruits, roots, wild game, and the hardy plants that grew inland. They learned to preserve everything, to waste nothing. The children of Ashe grew up knowing hunger as a constant companion, but they also grew up knowing resilience. The twins felt the lack most acutely in their mother's eyes. Khalifa never complained, never spoke of the rich fish stews of her youth, but they saw her watching the sea with a longing that had nothing to do with food. She was watching for a ship that never came, for a king who could not cross the impossible water. One evening, when the twins were 12, Mami Wata called them to her hut. The fire burned low as they sat cross-legged on woven mats, their mother beside them. The old priestess studied them for a long moment, her ancient eyes taking in every detail of the young men they were becoming. "You are old enough now," she said quietly, "to know the full truth of your beginning." And so she told them. She told them of King Orion, the seafaring ruler of distant Valerion, who had sailed to their island seeking escape from a goddess's curse. She told them of the love that bloomed between him and their mother, brief but powerful. She told them of his departure, unaware that Khalifa carried new life within her. She told them of Thalassa, the sea goddess whose child the king had accidentally killed, and the curse that had stolen 2 infant sons before them. She told them of their powers, inherited not just from her bloodline, but from something older, something the elder gods had whispered into the world long ago. Kaito listened with wide eyes, his quick mind racing through implications. Princes, they were princes. Somewhere across the sea, a father sat on a throne, dreaming of sons he had never held. Silas listened in silence, his gray-green eyes dark with thought. When Mami Wata finished, he spoke for both of them. "So the sea keeps us from him." It was not a question. "The sea keeps you from him," Mami Wata confirmed.
Thalassa will not let you cross until you are strong enough to defy her. That is the truth of it." The twins looked at each other. No words passed between them, but in that shared glance a pact was sealed. They would train harder. They would grow stronger. They would learn to control every aspect of their gifts, and when the time came, they would sail that cursed sea, face that ancient goddess, and claim their birthright. Not because a throne awaited them, but because a father did.
The years that followed the revelation were the hardest the twins had ever known. Not because the training grew more brutal, though it did, but because knowledge changed everything. Knowing they were princes of a distant kingdom, knowing their father waited and wondered, knowing a goddess hunted them specifically, it added weight to every breath, every swing of a sword, every moment of meditation. Kaito channeled this weight into action. He rose before dawn each day, running the island's perimeter, swimming in the lagoon, climbing the tallest trees until his muscles screamed. He practiced his shape-shifting with obsessive dedication, learning to transition from flesh to water to stone and back in the span of a heartbeat. The village warriors who trained him marveled at his progress. "The boy learns in weeks what takes others years," said Kofi, the lead combat instructor. "His body remembers things his mind has not yet learned." But Kofi also noticed something else. Kaito pushed too hard, too fast, driven by an urgency that bordered on reckless. He had to be reminded constantly to rest, to eat, to simply breathe. Silas took a different path. While his brother ran and climbed and fought, he sat. He sat for hours at the edge of the lagoon, watching the water, feeling the air, listening to the whisper of the wind through palm fronds. He practiced his storm voice not by calling lightning, but by summoning stillness. He learned to calm the weather around him, to create pockets of peace in a world that seemed determined to bring chaos. Mami Wata taught him that a storm was not just fury, it was also the quiet before, the patience of clouds gathering, the slow building of pressure. "Control is not just about aiming the bolt," she told him. "It is about deciding when to release and when to hold. Sometimes the greatest power is the storm you choose not to call." The brothers complemented each other perfectly. When Kaito pushed too hard, Silas would appear beside him, place a hand on his shoulder, and the manic energy would settle. When Silas retreated too deep into contemplation, Kaito would drag him to the training grounds, forcing him to move, to fight, to remember that power lived in the body as well as the mind. Their bond deepened into something almost mystical. They could communicate without words, sense each other's emotions across distance, know when the other was in danger. The village came to see them not as two individuals, but as a single force with two bodies, a belief the twins did nothing to discourage. The training itself evolved as they grew. By 14, they were sparring with the best warriors and winning. By 15, they were teaching younger students, their methods intuitive and effective. Kaito favored speed and adaptability, flowing around opponents like water, striking from unexpected angles. Silas favored economy of motion, each move precise and devastating, ending fights before they truly began. Their powers matured alongside their bodies. Kaito discovered he could shift not just himself, but objects he touched, a sword that became water in his hand, then solidified when thrown, a shield that merged with his arm, becoming part of his flesh. The possibilities seemed endless, limited only by his imagination and control. Silas learned to call lightning with a whisper, to summon gentle rain or fierce wind with a thought. He discovered he could sense approaching storms, feel the pressure changes in the air, know when the sea was about to turn violent. It made him the village's best early warning system. When Silas grew restless, everyone moved inland. But through all the training, all the growth, one question remained unanswered. When would they be ready? Mami Wata watched them constantly, measuring their progress against the vision the elder gods had shown her. The two paths still existed, one of balance and unity, one of corruption and loss. She could not see which they would choose. That choice, she knew, would not come until they faced Thalassa directly. Until then, every day of training was a step toward one destiny or the other. On the night of their 16th birthday, the twins sat together on the beach where Silas had first called lightning. The moon was full, painting the water in silver. The sea was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that preceded a storm. They felt it together, the pressure building, the weight of years of preparation. "Do you think we're ready?" Kaito asked, his voice quiet. Silas was silent for a long moment. Then he pointed to the horizon, where the water seemed to darken, where something moved beneath the surface. "She's going to test us soon, whether we're ready or not." They watched the darkness together, brothers in blood and spirit, princes of a distant throne, heirs to a war they had not chosen but would not refuse. The sea stirred. The goddess waited, and somewhere across that impossible water, a king they never met lit a candle in a stone window, hoping somehow it would guide them home.
The test came 3 nights later, not as a storm or a wave or an army of drowned, but as a whisper. Silas woke first, his gray-green eyes snapping open in the darkness of the hut he shared with his brother. He heard it, a voice soft as silk, cold as the deep, winding through his mind like smoke through cracks in a wall. "Silas, son of the storm, I have watched you grow. I have felt your power ripple across my waters. You are magnificent." He sat up slowly, his heart pounding, but his face still. Beside him, Kaito slept on, oblivious. The voice continued, sweet and poisonous. "You do not belong to that small island, to that old woman's superstitions. You belong to the deep. The sea is your true home. The lightning you call, it comes from the sky, yes, but the sky meets the sea. We are connected, you and I. Come to me. Let me show you what you could become." Silas closed his eyes, reaching for the calm Mami Wata had taught him. He found it, a still center within the storm of his emotions. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm, directed inward. "You are Thalassa. You killed my father's ships. You want to use me." The voice laughed, a sound like waves on a midnight shore. "Use you? No, little storm. I want to complete you. Your brother clings to the land. He will always hold you back. But with me you could fly. You could command the seas and skies together. Think of it. No more hunger, no more hiding, no more training until your bones ache. Power, Silas, true power. All you have to do is walk into the water." An image bloomed in his mind, himself older, standing on a throne of coral, lightning arcing from his hands across a dark sea. Beside him Kaito was there too, but transformed, not stone or water, but something else, something shadowed and cold, his blue eyes gone black. They ruled together, gods of the deep, beyond the reach of any king or priestess. It was beautiful. It was terrifying, and it was a lie. Silas recognized the lie in the details. The Kaito in that vision was wrong. His brother would never stand beside him in darkness, would never abandon the light in his eyes. The vision twisted what he loved most, and in that twisting, it revealed itself. "No," Silas said, and this time his voice carried power. The air in the hut crackled. A faint glow gathered around his chest. "You do not know my brother, and you do not know me. Leave this place." The laughter stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then the voice returned, colder now, the sweetness gone. "You reject me now, little storm, but I am patient. The sea has existed since before your world was born. It will exist long after your bones are sand. I will wait. And when your precious island fails you, when your brother cannot save you, when your father proves himself the weakling I know him to be, I will be here, and you will come to me." The presence vanished, leaving Silas gasping. He was drenched in sweat, his body trembling. The glow faded. The air returned to normal. Beside him, Kaito stirred, blinking awake. "Silas, what happened?" Silas looked at his brother, really looked at him, at the warmth in his blue eyes, the concern on his face, the solid reality of him.
The vision's lie was obvious now. Kaito could never be twisted into that shadow thing. Their bond was stronger than any goddess's magic. "She spoke to me," Silas said quietly. "Thalassa, in my mind. She tried to tempt me." Kaito was instantly awake, instantly alert. "What did she say?" Silas told him everything. The promises, the vision, the final threat. When he finished, Kaito's jaw was tight, his hands fists. "She will not take you," he said. "Ever. I will die before I let that happen." Silas nodded slowly. "I know. That's what defeated her, I think. Not my refusal, but my knowing that the vision of you was wrong. She does not understand us. She cannot." They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of what had happened settling over them. In the morning, they told Mamiwata everything. The old priestess listened without interruption, her face grave. When they finished, she nodded slowly. "This is the second path I saw in my vision," she said, "the path of corruption. She will try to turn you against each other, against your family, against yourselves. You must be each other's anchor. You must trust nothing that comes from the deep." She looked at Silas with pride in her ancient eyes. "You resisted. That is good. But the tests will grow harder. She will find your weaknesses and probe them. You must find them first and seal them." That day, the training changed again. It was no longer about strength or skill. It was about the mind, the heart, the unbreakable bond between brothers. Thalassa had shown her new strategy. Now they had to build the armor to withstand it. The months that followed, Thalassa's whispered temptation brought a new kind of tension to the Isle of Ashe. Silas found himself constantly on guard, listening not just with his ears but with his spirit for any trace of that cold, seductive voice. It did not return, but its absence was its own kind of pressure, the silence before another strike. Kaito stayed close to his brother, their bond deepening into something almost tangible. They trained together, ate together, slept in the same hut with a candle burning through the night. The village noticed and whispered, but no one questioned. Everyone understood that the sea goddess had drawn first blood in a new kind of war. Mamiwata intensified their spiritual training. She taught them to build walls in their minds, to recognize the difference between their own thoughts and foreign intrusions. She showed them how to meditate in pairs, their energies intertwined so that an attack on one would alert the other instantly. "She will try to divide you," Mamiwata warned repeatedly. "That is her only hope. Together, you are stronger than she expects. Divided, you are prey." The twins took the lessons to heart. They practiced until they could finish each other's sentences, sense each other's moods from across the village, know instantly when the other was in distress. Their bond became the stuff of legend among the villagers. 2 bodies, 1 soul. But life on Ashe continued its difficult rhythm. The fishing remained poor, the sea ever hostile. The village survived on what the jungle provided, but the variety grew thin, the portions smaller. Children cried from hunger some nights. Adults moved through their days with a quiet desperation that never quite left their eyes. The twins felt the weight of their people's suffering. They were the protectors, the chosen ones, yet they could not fill empty bellies or calm the endless hunger. It was a different kind of test, one that required patience rather than power. Kaito struggled most with this. His nature demanded action, solutions, movement. Seeing his people suffer while he trained felt like failure. He would often slip away to the jungle, gathering extra fruit or hunting small game, leaving bundles at the doors of families with young children. Silas would find him afterward, exhausted and frustrated, and simply sit with him in silence. No words needed, just presence. On Kaito's 17th birthday, something shifted. He was practicing his shape-shifting at the lagoon's edge, pushing himself to hold a water form for longer than ever before. Silas sat nearby, meditating, their bond a quiet hum in the background of each other's awareness. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple when Kaito felt it, a presence in the water that was not his own. He solidified instantly, his blue eyes scanning the lagoon. The water was still, too still. Then, from the depths, a figure rose, not a drowned creature of coral and bone, but something different. A woman made of translucent water, her features shifting, fluid, beautiful, and terrible. She did not attack, she simply stood on the water's surface, watching him with eyes that held the darkness of the deepest trench. "Kaito," she said, and her voice was like waves on a midnight shore. "Son of the shapeshifter's bloodline, I have watched you grow. You are magnificent." Kaito's heart hammered, but he did not retreat. He felt Silas stir behind him, felt his brother's attention sharpen. They were together, and they were ready. "Thalassa," Kaito said flatly, "have you come to try what failed with my brother?" The water woman smiled, a cold expression that did not reach her empty eyes. "Your brother rejected my offer because he feared losing you, a noble sentiment. But you, Kaito, you are different. You crave action, purpose, glory. You chafe against this small island, these endless days of training. I can give you what you desire." Another vision instantly bloomed. Kaito leading an army of shifting warriors, his body flowing from form to form, unstoppable, glorious. He stood on the deck of a great ship, his father's kingdom spread before him, the sea itself bowing to his will. Silas was there too, but in this vision his brother smiled. He seemed proud and supportive. They ruled together, not as gods of the deep, but as kings of all they surveyed. It was seductive. It was everything Kaito had ever secretly wanted. But as he watched the vision, he noticed something wrong. In his brother's proud smile, there was a flicker, a shadow that passed too quickly, a coldness in those gray-green eyes that should not exist. The vision was trying to show him unity, but it could not hide the truth. Silas would never stand beside him in conquest born of the goddess's favor. And in that seeing, Kaito knew the truth. He laughed. It was not a harsh laugh, but a warm one, full of certainty. "You almost had me," he said to the water woman. "I do want those things. I want to be great. I want to protect my people. I want to see my father's face when he meets us." He paused, and his voice softened. "But I do not want them without him." He turned slightly, gesturing to where Silas now stood at the water's edge, his gray-green eyes calm and steady. "My brother is not just my conscience, he is my completion. Any future that has him whole and free in it is not a future I want. Your vision is beautiful, but it is built on a lie, that I would choose glory over him. You do not understand us, goddess, you never will." The water woman's form flickered, her smile fading. For a moment, something ancient and furious burned in those empty eyes. Then, slowly, she dissolved back into the lagoon, leaving only ripples on the surface. The last sound they heard was her voice, fainter now, but no less chilling. "You reject me now, both of you, but I am patient. The sea remembers, the sea waits, and one day you will learn that even the strongest bond can drown." The twins stood together at the water's edge, watching the last ripples fade. Kaito let out a long breath. "Well," he said, "that was unpleasant." Silas almost smiled. "She tried to give you an army. She tried to give me a throne. We both chose each other. She really doesn't understand." They walked back to the village together, shoulders almost touching, the bond stronger for having been tested. Thalassa had tried both brothers now, and both had refused. But they knew, they all knew, she would not stop. The only question was what form her next attack would take.
The twins were 18 years old when Mommy Wada called them to her hut for what she said would be their final lesson. The years had shaped them into young men who moved with the confidence of warriors and the stillness of priests. Kaito stood broad-shouldered and warm, his blue eyes holding the same adventurous spark, but tempered now with wisdom hard-won through years of training and temptation. Silas had grown tall and lean, his gray-green eyes deeper than ever, holding the calm of a sky that had weathered countless storms. They entered the hut to find not just their grandmother, but their mother as well. Khalifa's face showed her 40-plus years, lines around her eyes from squinting into the sun, gray threads in her braids. But her beauty remained, the beauty of a woman who had loved deeply and sacrificed completely. She smiled at her sons, and the smile held all the years of watching them grow, of feeding them from a diminishing larder, of praying to spirits she could not see that they would survive. Mami Wata motioned for them to sit. The fire burned low, as it always did for serious matters. The old priestess studied them for a long moment, her ancient eyes taking in every detail of the men they had become. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 2 decades of waiting. "The time has come," she said simply. "You are ready. But readiness does not mean we have a ship. Your father must find a way to reach us, or we must find a way to reach him. That is the next challenge." Before anyone could respond, the air in the hut changed. It grew cold, impossibly cold, the fire guttering as if choked by an unseen hand. Mami Wata's eyes went wide, not with fear, but with recognition. She knew this feeling. She had felt it once before, during the eclipse, when Thalassa had pushed against the veil. "Outside," she whispered. "Now, all of you." They burst from the hut to find the village in chaos. People screamed and pointed toward the beach. But Mami Wata did not run toward the water. She stood her ground, her staff raised, her voice cutting through the panic. "Kaito, Silas, stay behind me. Khalifa, protect them if I fall." Khalifa grabbed her son's arms, pulling them back, her face a mask of terror and confusion. "Mother, what?" "No time." Mami Wata's eyes were fixed on the beach, where the sea had begun to glow with a sickly green light. From that light, a figure emerged. Thalassa. Not a vision, not a whisper, not a water form. The goddess herself, in something approaching flesh, her pale skin luminous, her seaweed hair drifting despite the windlessness, her black eyes fixed on the old priestess who had defied her for so long. "Mami Wata," Thallas's voice rolled across the sand like waves on a midnight shore. "Keeper of the land magic, protector of the twins, you have been a thorn in my side for 18 years. I have tried to go around you, over you, through you, but today I go through you." Mami Wata did not flinch. She raised her staff higher, and the symbols carved into it began to glow with warm golden light. "You are not welcome here, goddess. This island is protected by powers older than your salt and deeper than your rage." Thalassa laughed, a cold sound that made the villagers shiver. "Your powers are old, priestess, but I am older. The sea existed before the land rose from it, and the sea will exist after the land crumbles." She raised one pale hand, and the water behind her rose into 1,000 spears of liquid ice. They hung in the air, gleaming with deadly intent. "Your grandsons will come for me eventually. Grief will pull them across the sea. But first, they must learn what loss truly means." The spears flew. Mami Wata swung her staff, and a wall of golden light erupted before her, deflecting most of the projectiles. But Thalassa had anticipated this. While the priestess focused on the barrage, a single spear of ice slipped through from the side, silent, unseen. It struck Mami Wata in the chest. She stumbled, the golden light flickering. Khalifa screamed. The twins lunged forward, but their grandmother's voice stopped them cold. "No, stay back." She was on her knees now, the ice spear protruding from her chest, her blood soaking the sand, but her eyes still blazed with power. She looked at Thalassa and smiled, a smile of pure, defiant triumph. "You think this ends it? You think killing me removes my protection?" She laughed, a wet, bloody sound. "I have already passed everything I know to my daughter. She is ready. She has always been ready. You have not killed the protection, goddess. You have merely promoted it." Thallas's black eyes narrowed, her form flickering with rage. But before she could strike again, Mami Wata raised her staff one last time. The golden light exploded outward, a wave of pure spiritual force that slammed into Thalassa and her drowned, heeling them back into the sea. The goddess screamed, a sound of fury and frustration as the water swallowed her. And then she was gone. The beach was silent, save for the gentle lap of waves and the ragged breathing of the villagers. Mami Wata lay on the sand, her life draining away, her staff fallen beside her. Khalifa reached her first, cradling her mother's head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "No, Mama, no, please, stay with me." Mami Wata's eyes found her daughter's, and in them was not pain, but peace. "You are ready," she whispered. "You have always been ready. The spirits know you. The people trust you. Take my staff. Take my place. Protect them." Her gaze shifted to the twins, who knelt beside her mother, their faces streaked with tears, their hands gripping each other. "My grandsons," she breathed. "My jewels. My legacy. Avenge me not with hate, but with justice. Not with rage, but with purpose. You are the balance. Remember that." Her eyes closed, her chest stilled. The great priestess of Ashe was gone. The village wailed. The drums began a mourning rhythm, slow and terrible. And on the beach, a new priestess arose. Khalifa took her mother's staff, her hands trembling, her heart shattered.
But when she stood and faced her people, something in her had changed. The grief was there, yes, but beneath it, a strength she had not known she possessed. She looked at her sons, at the twins who carried the hopes of two worlds. "She is with the ancestors now," Khalifa said, her voice steady despite everything. "And we have work to do. Your father must be reached, a ship must be built, and when the time comes, Thalassa will learn what happens when you kill a priestess who has already planted her seeds." The twins looked at each other, then at their mother, who was their priestess now, and nodded.
The vengeance would come, but first they would honor Mami Wata's final gift, a family united, a legacy secured, and a purpose clear as the sky after a storm.